Hi, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Experts Live India podcast. I'm Samir, and today I'm joined by my ex colleague, Bruce. Hi, Bruce.
Hello.
How are you doing? It's been, I don't know, it's been long since we officially spoke.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. How's everything with you?
Good. Well, I don't know if I can still say that I'm still adjusting to my new role because it's been 7, 8 months now.
That's
But
quite a
yeah,
while.
it's a lot to catch up. So
Yeah, I imagine it's one of those things where there's quite a lot of difference going from a smaller company to a bigger company. I certainly
yeah,
felt that the reverse of that to be true, going from larger to smaller. It takes time.
absolutely. It's I think the challenging thing that I'm struggling with is just making contacts because there's feels like there are millions and billions of people in the company. So it's always the other guy who will help you, not this one.
Yeah. Getting that mental map of who's worth knowing and who can help you with stuff always takes time.
Absolutely. So I've made a OneNote page dedicated to just to people. This guy's for this. This guy's for this.
Yeah.
It's hundreds of names on there now.
I bet. Well, it's not a small company, so probably many pages of OneNote will be needed.
Absolutely. Cool. So, Bruce, you are the Director of Advanced Products at SquareUp. That is an interesting title. I will definitely like to know more about that. You have also one of the founding members, or if not the founder of Cookdown, because I know it was you and Nathan.
It was. Yeah.
So you also founded Cookdown again. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about Cookdown. And then you're also the host of Scomathon, Bruce is not a strange name for anyone involved in Scom community. So Bruce is very familiar, very active there. So maybe you can also give us a little bit of more info, tell us a bit more about what Scomathon is. So today we are here. So I've invited Bruce here today to talk about product management because I know Bruce has been, like I said, he's been a founder of Cookdown, and that comes with its own challenges because being an advanced, director of advanced products, I know that he has built products from the scratch, as far back as starting from the market research, right? Even just assessing, is there a really any potential for this product? Just from that point on to actually developing it, marketing it, selling it, putting it away against competitors, and outselling them or whatever. So Bruce has done it all. So I know he is the right candidate for this. So Bruce, without further ado, let's get straight into it then.
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and I guess there's lots of stuff to unpack. I should probably start by giving a bit of my history. What led me to this weird kind of three in one job scenario that I'm in today. So I guess I started actually as a software tester back in 2008 when I graduated, and I did that for 5 years at Citrix before moving to become a project manager. I did that for about 5 years too. I ended up running Zen App and Zen Desktop, as it was called back then. I've renamed it a few times since. CVAD, I think, is the current name. But anyway, I ran cloud, I ran on-prem, was involved in sort of setting up cloud from a project perspective. So that was lots of fun before joining SquareUp as a program manager. When I was a program manager at SquareUp, I saw an opportunity for us to do something as SquareUp we weren't doing with the product, which was to bring the dashboarding technology that we made at that time for SCOM to the project management space, because that was literally part of what we were trying to do at Citrix at the point I left, to create a tool that would pull together data from all the different engineering tools and display it. And so I pitched it to my boss, Rich, on an aeroplane on the way to come and see yourself, in fact, Samir at Experts Live India. Wow. In fact, yeah, indeed. I had a captive audience. The flight from the UK to Hyderabad, what is that, 8 hours, something like that?
It's 9 hours.
Yeah, it's a fair old flight. So either way, there's no escaping me on that flight. So I gave him a business pitch for this idea. And he said, "It's interesting, Bruce. I like the idea, but right now there's something else I wanted to pitch to you. There's something I want you to do, which is this thing called Cookdown, which is all about connecting SCOM, extending SCOM, doing more with its kind of capabilities. It's a very versatile and malleable platform. I'd like you to help head it up alongside Nathan Foreman, and we'll spin it out as a separate company. And he's like, you can take some time to think about it if you want. And I kind of said, why would I take time to think about this?
I've already thought about it.
I'm in. Yeah. When do I start?
Yeah.
So it was from that event that Cookdown was kind of born. And so the whole point was, so we had an idea. Rich had an idea of what we could build. But the next thing was really to validate whether it was just a nice idea or whether anyone actually wanted to buy it. There was actually interest in such an idea. Now, in my experience of starting stuff, I wouldn't necessarily put this in the same category as product management, although there is a large amount of overlap. The hardest thing is getting feedback, and especially when it's a brand new idea. Sort of conventional product management is more involved in software that already exists, and you're iterating on it, you're building the next version of it and a new feature. So because of that, it already has customers you could go and speak to with relative ease. They're already using the product. So whether they like it or they hate it, they're at least going to give you some of their time. It's a lot easier to get their time.
Yeah.
But in the case of, I have a blank sheet of paper and a flashing cursor and I want to build this magic thing, are you interested in talking to me about it? So the good news in the case of Cookdown was, because we were attached to Squared Up, who also do SCOM tooling, obviously dashboarding for SCOM. There were some people, it was easier to have those initial conversations. And we had kind of two products in mind from those early days. We had a thing called EasyTune, which is all about tuning SCOM's alerting capabilities, and a thing called AlertSync, as it was called back then, which was all about connecting SCOM into ServiceNow to raise incidents from SCOM alerts, was the whole idea. And so we tapped up our networks. We stood up a webinar to Squared Up customers to say, look, we're spinning out this new company to take SCOM kind of further, with the hope that, and the kind of call to action at the end was, please sign up and let us know if you're interested in more. And luckily for us, we got a whole bunch of signups. So that's a really important point. We had access to a bunch of people who were the right kinds of people, and they responded positively. So we knew right from the off we had some level of product market fit, although there's still many, many conversations to have to kind of prove, do we have something? This was all before we'd actually built anything. This was all sort of pre.
This is more in the preparation of finding out the right audience, or whether is there a scope for this kind of product.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing if there's product market fit. So that was really positive. So then we had a bunch of customer conversations, or I had a bunch of customer conversations to figure out if the vision I had matched what people were interested in doing with kind of SCOM. And in practice, that looked like a bunch of PowerPoint slides and me giving a pitch and suggesting what the done state might look like. So yeah, product market fit is an important first step. Do I have an idea that someone's willing to pay for, or at least consider? And what we were finding from those initial conversations is people were kind of interested, but they wanted to be able to see it, which is where the whole initial, it's where you get code, it's where you get a developer involved and start to write code. Luckily, I had possibly the best developer for this situation that one could have in Nathan Foreman, who is one of, part of the founding team of Cookdown. So Nathan was a SCOM administrator. So he was the person that had the pain we were trying to solve. He was also a developer, which is a unique combination. Developers, easy enough to find. People that have problems, easy enough to find. Someone that can solve their own problems and not just do that in a kind of scripty, suits one company but couldn't be made into a product form is a unique combination. So I was really lucky there with Nathan, and that was all obviously Rich's handiwork in finding us both and bringing us both together. So Nathan said about coding an initial POC. He did start with doing it in PowerShell for our early products, just to kind of showcase what it might look like in sort of done form, and we took that to customers again for feedback. We then ran a beta program. The whole idea was, tell us if this is any good. clearly marked as beta, i.e. it may never see the light of day, we may never productize it. And there were things that we did do a beta program for, but we did never productize. There are things that probably you've never even heard of, but that's fine. That's the whole point of trying these things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. We then got the feedback from betas. It was mixed for the products. Some of the feedback was along the lines of, this is perfect. I have this problem. I can see the solution. For easy tune, our alert tuning thing, the whole idea was it was based around spreadsheets, essentially. You put all of your would-be tuning into Excel spreadsheets, which you would import into SCOM in the form of overrides. Now, this sounds a bit weird and wonderful if you don't know SCOM, but the conventional approach involves the user interface that SCOM provided, and to do the same thing is like 10 clicks per piece of tuning you want to override, with a very clunky UI, and you might have 1,000 bits of tuning to do, so it can take forever.
I can validate whatever you're saying, because I've been a SCOM admin, and EasyTune is I love it. I absolutely love it.
Thank you. It solves a real problem, and that's why, if we'd have made something, we had other ideas that didn't make the cut, that nobody wanted, and they kind of went, yeah, it looks kind of nice. You didn't ever get a no. It's very rare you got a flat out no. You got kind of a lukewarm kind of response, like, okay, that's all I need to know. That's not a yes.
Those ones are the tricky ones, I think. Like, so you have yeses and then you have no's, but then you're like, maybe. But then again, should you keep investing time, money, efforts into this?
So I would say generally the answer there is, if it's not a hard yes, it's going to be harder to convince them from a maybe to a yes. Unless they give you something specific you can work with to bring it from a maybe to a yes. Like, oh, I don't know, if only it did A, or what about this case? You could talk about it. You could build something against that use case and then come back. The reality is, if you get without anything specific, it's not going anywhere. It's the same as a no. But that's a lesson I've learned the hard way, because I've chased a bunch of those matters and they've ended up nowhere. So I've kind of seen that journey. So then we got to this point where we had a first version of some products, and we went more public, so outside of just existing customers from Squared Up, who were easy to access and get feedback off of. We launched the company at a conference in Austin, Texas, Experts Live US, which was in a really cool cinema. And popcorn was our giveaway, which worked perfectly for a cinema. And we had conversations with people that we knew nothing about. We didn't know if they even have SCOM. So then that gig is a lot more like, well, first you have to qualify they have SCOM and that they have the pain, and then sell them in like a minute on what the idea is. And if you're lucky, get them a demo. And we did have the early beta products at this stage. And again, the feedback was okay. It was a relatively small scale conference. And in hindsight, I think that's possibly a mistake. I think we should have probably gone bigger. But the problem you've got when you're starting something from scratch, unless you're doing it for an established company, is going to shows costs money, right? And quite a lot of money.
You don't have the funds,
Exactly. And you've only got so much money. If you're you're a startup and you're VC backed or something, you end up with a big mountain of cash in the bank. But it's up to you to spend that money. And if you spend a large chunk on a conference, it's a flop. That's not the way to go. And the other thing I would say about how we started in sort of hindsight is we could have done things more digitally initially. We did stand up a website, but we didn't work so hard initially on kind of the blogs and ways of getting organic traffic in, encouraging people to come to us that had the pain. But one thing that we did do, aside from events that worked really well, was just webinars, tons and tons of webinars, talking about different angles at the product, talking about the pain, talking about some of the use cases that were really, really specific, and they really worked. Because then you're talking about the products in a form that encourages people to register to hear about the products, then they're not just passively browsing a website. So yeah, I would say webinars was a really useful tool. We got people to essentially register for showing their interest in the product in such a way that meant they had to give us our details. So it wasn't just like somebody passively browsing a website. They had to, sign up for that. And because they were live, there's a chat box. People can tell you what they think about it real time. So you get some feedback. But really, the value is you get people's details so you can follow up with them. And if anyone so much as comments, apart from just to say thanks at the end, they're somewhat interested and it's worth a follow-up.
Yeah.
So anyone that comments on the webinar, you, sir, are getting an email afterwards. And ideally a call, right? Because really what I want to do is to get them to have a look at it. And there are a couple of ways that those sorts of things go. Either it's a demo call, or more ideally, it's would you like a free trial? Would you like a free version, an NFR, whatever, 3-month license, something to get them interested. So there's something in it for them. And there's also something in it for me. And at this stage, it's not really about making sales. It's about collecting feedback. And with that feedback, obviously, you iterate and you feed that feedback into your product backlog. And this is where we start to go from entrepreneur land to product management, essentially. Because now we have an established product. We have people that need it. Hopefully by this stage of time, we've sold it a little bit at least. So we started to validate product market fit. And by the way, product market fit is a term that really resonates with me because it's not just people say they like it. It means they're also willing to buy the thing, right? They're willing to use it, to engage with it in a way that isn't just, yeah, we'll download a free thing. Sure, I'll give you half an hour of my time. It's a really important piece of validating product market fit. So by this stage, we had a couple of customers, fast forwarding a little bit, and an early product. And the temptation at this stage is to get it to be as good as it can be by hammering out all the bugs. But at this stage, the types of customers you're going to have are going to be early adopters, what are called early adopters. Right. So they're the sorts of customer who will accept a load of rough edges and way more crashes than I would expect, to be honest with you. But because they have, yeah, totally. They're on board for the journey. There's a really good book that explains customer profile and the journey of a piece of software called Crossing the Chasm. That's really worth kind of looking at where this term early adopter has come from. So there's a book that's really worth looking at if you're interested in this sort of thing called Crossing the Chasm by a guy called Geoffrey Moore. And in it, he talks about the journey that a new product goes through in essentially gaining market dominance. And it starts off by describing the first type of people you want to get as early adopters. So these are they're people that have the problem. They are visionary type people. They're willing to see through a bunch of crashes to see the value that's there. They're not like, oh, it's not a polished product, I'm not interested. And getting to the early adopters is kind of the first gig. So you have to get through the innovators, and the innovators they just want to play with any cool new tech. And so when you've got a couple of customers, typically you've got innovators, and you're going to try and make the jump from innovators to early adopters. They require it to work. They won't accept it to be just littered with issues, but they'll accept some wrinkles and feature gaps and things. And so making the jump between the early guys, the innovators, and the early adopters is what it's kind of all about, to validate product market fit and start to begin to scale up, really. And that's difficult. And that's where we start to make the jump from kind of, the early stuff where it's like, do I have a product people are willing to pay for, to product management? Because by this time you'll have a bunch of ideas from your innovators, and you'll be feeding them into your product backlog, and you'll be prioritizing them. You'll be having lengthy discussions around the right approach and everything to feed them into your backlog. And product management is really all about that. Speaking to your customers, figuring out what pain they've got, capturing that pain in features, feeding that pain to engineering teams, and kind of a key piece of being great at doing that is communication, because you need to be able to communicate an idea succinctly and clearly to a customer who hasn't seen the product, who isn't the visionary for the thing. But at the same time, be able to talk technical, to be able to translate what the customer is saying into engineering speak, Because ultimately it's all well and good understanding what the customer wants, but if you can't tell the engineering team to go build that, then that doesn't really help, essentially. So being good with people is kind of really important for product management. So going back to kind of the Cookdown story a little bit, we had this product that was kind of early doors. It worked, but it was littered with bugs, and it was through essentially kind of customer feedback that we managed to get these products from really early from the early elevator type customers that are interested in it, but aren't necessarily willing to pay proper money for it, to actually getting it to early adopters. Now, how do you tell the difference? The innovators, while they have the product and the problem, are typically going to be asking questions around the technology and the how. How does it work, rather than looking at the utilitarian value of the software? How, what does it do for me? They're interested in that too, but that's secondary. They're interested in it because it's new and shiny, essentially, and because they get a chance to be the first to try it.
I was gonna, sorry, I'm going to interject you here a little bit. I was going to ask you, so a lot of people, they say that customers don't know what they want. Do you kind of agree with that? Because when you come up with a product or an idea of a product, is it something that you have to go out and find an actual problem and then try to solve it? Or is it like, I'll make a product that vaguely solves a problem and then I convince the customer, hey, you know what, you need this product, you don't realize it, but you need this.
I think yes, that's true to some extent. If you ask somebody, what should I build for you, you'll get an answer. And if you ask that question, you're not going to get an answer that's going to be conducive to building something. If you ask somebody about what problems they have, you're going to get something that's valuable. They don't necessarily know what the answer is to solving those problems, but that's a much more valuable kind of starting point. Essentially, start with the pain, don't start with what can I build for you, because obviously you're going to build something for them, but in asking that question, you're shaping their answer. People don't know what the end product is that they're after. All they know is they have a pain that looks like ABC. So as a way of starting the conversation, when we're talking about EasyTune, the alert tuning product, rather than talk about EasyTune, what we'd actually do is start by going, hello, we're going to look at solving some problems in the area of alert tuning. How do you guys currently do alert tuning? And you just get the customer, the prospect to talk. And you'll usually get something like, oh, we do alert tuning this way or another way. It's okay, but we've got these problems with doing it this way. Like, oh, yes, that's interesting. Do tell me more. Obviously, I've had several conversations like this, but you want them to share the specifics of their pain. And there are nuances. You'll find that not everyone has exactly the same pain, but there's different sides of the same thing, basically. And that's what you're looking for. If you've got loads of people that have the same pain, and you have an idea in mind, something you can build that will solve that pain, then you're off to a good start, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I was saying, so when you said that there are early adopters and then there are innovators. Adopters, I have briefly worked with some while I was a Square Up. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it now, but there was a product that we were trying out, a cloud-based product, and we had a very early stage prototype of it, and we had some early adopters, I think 3 or 4 of them. What you say is absolutely true. So there was no GUI. Whatever GUI was there, it was like only barely enough, not enough sometimes. It was like a lot of it was still done programmatically. So I would go get in call with these customers. I would show them, okay, so I've built this 100 line script to do this thing, but this is just for the POC. This is just for the, to give you an idea of what you will be able to achieve after the product is done. So you don't have to do this every time yourself. There will be a GUI that will walk you through all of this wizard by wizard, right? So again, so the guy I was working with was very tolerant. He was very patient with me. Again, I was like, because of course with these things, there's a lot of errors that come up, and there's the script, there are errors. So even every time I would go to run in a particular script, there would be errors, and he would patiently wait for me to rectify them. But there was again a lot of bugs. the innovators, like you said, don't really want to get bogged down with the errors and bugs. They want features. So feature versus bugs, that is one of the things that balance, I think, is hard to achieve sometimes. Because do you cater towards solving the bugs, or do you add more features? How do you prioritize between them?
So it depends on what stage in the product's life cycle you're at. If you're early doors, you're still getting something off the ground, forget about the bugs, unless they're like you can't access any of the functionality. It's all about features. But I wouldn't even necessarily couch it as features, because the danger is if you talk about it in terms of features, which is a very common thing to do in software engineering and product management, then you end up being driven to sort of backlog reviews and lists of features and priority order. For me, the way I would describe this early stuff is focus on the pain rather than even necessarily focus on the features, because it's the pain we're trying to solve. The features are part of the way in which we solve that pain, but really at this stage, it's the pain that's so important rather than worrying about necessarily features and quality. There's a minimum level of acceptability, but that quality bar can be pretty damn low to start with. If you find the right sorts of people, you want those innovators that are willing to tolerate the this crashes every time I load the script the first time, but the second time it works okay kind of thing. Those guys, they're your guys. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So since you've been involved in product management, like you said, is only a part of your job. You're
Yeah.
not a product manager. What goes into making a good product manager? What skills, or what are the focus areas? What are the talents, let's say, you should have to be an effective product manager?
So I would say, having played the role as part of Cookdown and now so with the advanced product group, communication is really, really important. You're the person as a product manager that speaks to the customer and goes, hey, what should we be building for you? And translates that into engineering speak. So communication is really, really key. You need to clearly and succinctly communicate what you're trying to build to the customer, collect what they've said, which is not necessarily going to fit what you've asked them. And then you need to be able to have the technical nous to be able to go to the engineering team and go, and this is what I want you to build, essentially. Yeah. I would say those are the top two skills, to be honest with you.
And I think that also goes the other way around, because I remember, I can give you an example this from the top of my head. So I work for Dell, and Dell have a integration plugin with Windows Admin Center for managing its CI. So there are new features, new versions of the product that we constantly ship out, and let's say one of the newest features was KSR, kernel soft reboot. Now that is a new feature. Engineering understand what it does. They will give you a very technical answer if you ask them what is KSR. They will be okay. They will do this, and they will reboot the kernel in this way, that way, which is safer and easier. Blah blah blah. But then to a end user, I have to translate it differently. I have to tell him, okay, with this KSR feature, you can actually, the reboot time of your server is drastically improved. So now your servers will run, or it will reboot 10 times faster. Mm-hmm. So that is the English that the end user understands, and that is the other English is what the product manager group understands.
So what you've done there is you've gone from what does it do to why do you want it, focusing on the benefits, essentially. The benefits and the pain. So the pain is presumably reboot times are slow. That's the problem that this feature is looking to address. I don't know anything about it, so correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know anything about it at all. I'm guessing the problem is reboot times are slow. The solution is this will make reboot times much quicker. How? Don't care almost. The engineers, on the other hand, sure, it's slow. That's relative. They'll give you technical reasons why it's relative, and maybe if it's, there's certain things you can do to speed it up, or I guess you're a hardware manufacturer. I was going to say run it on different hardware is the one I always hear when we're talking about software.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean the point being that you have to in under the communication skills umbrella, you should be able to extract the information that is relevant to each of the group when you're communicating from product to the customers and from customers to the product team. You should be able to translate the message well.
Yeah, absolutely. I say those are the top two, and kind of like a sort of part two to communication, I guess, is not just being able to tell people things in a clear manner, but it's about having a relationship and like a rapport with those people. Because if
Yeah.
they basically think you're a snake oil salesman, they're not going to want to open up to you and tell you anything, are they? So you need to have some level of like a relationship with them. They
Yeah.
need to feel they can trust you, that you're going to actually like listen to them. So that's sort of like personal skills.
Yeah.
I'd say that's sort of 2B. And the third down the list is the commercial aspect. Because even if there's pain there, and you can translate that pain into engineering speak and get somebody to build something that will solve the pain, that's great. But if no one's willing to pay for it, then you haven't got a business, have you? You've got a free thing, and that's fine. There's times you need a free thing. There are times at Cookdown we've built free MPs. Usually those are for reasons of marketing and sales, essentially, and that's the lead generation tools that you have to sign up for these things. And by doing so, we get your details so we can market to you. But typically, if it's something that is not sellable, then we're not going to build it. And there's a few sort of aspects to that. One of them is this a problem somebody's willing to pay for, which is the obvious one. But the sort of less obvious one is kind of what is the sort of state or shape of the market right now. So if there are 20 other companies doing exactly the same thing already, you're building a brand new product from scratch, it's going to be much harder to make ground than if you're second to market, or hopefully better still, first to market with something new. Although not being first to market isn't in itself an issue, essentially. It's actually kind of helpful to be second to market, because you can see how it's gone for the first guy that's gone there. They've validated there is pain in this space. They've also done some work to carve out the shape of the market, to understand how much money is in it and the types of people that are willing to buy a product in this space. And this will be reflected in the marketing and things that are going to be on your competitors' websites. Yeah.
So when you came out with Alert Sync or Alert Tune, was there any similar product? Did you have any competitors?
So with EasyTune, yes, absolutely, we did. With Alert Sync, there's always the build it yourself option, but there weren't really any solutions that did exactly the same thing. There now are, which is interesting. So we've done some category creation, and people are now competing with us. They've seen what we've done, they've seen it's working, and they've gone, yeah, cool, we could build something like this too, which is no bad thing. Competition is good, because it means we're forced to keep it. We can't just sell the same old thing we've been selling for years. We have to keep upping our game, and ultimately, who wins? The customer wins, right? They get a better solution for their needs, and it's not bad for us because all of these other competitors are driving awareness of the problem.
That's true.
So both, I've seen both, where we've done some category creation and where we've done some selling into spaces where there is existing software. So EasyTune, for example, there were actually free solutions that did some of the solution. So that was an interesting one in itself. And that really shapes the commercial aspects of EasyTune, because it meant we couldn't just sell a product. We had to have a free tier because we were competing with a free product. But yet we're able to sell the paid for thing because there are features and functionality and additional pain solved in the paid for edition that isn't solved by anything that's out there that's sort of free. So that's another aspect. The commercialization piece is, okay, so you've established people are willing to pay for this thing. How much are they willing to pay for it? Do you charge them monthly? Do you charge them annually? SaaS versus on-prem software sets some of this, and competitors set some of this as well. So having the skills and ability to navigate that and to come up with a sensible commercial model that will fly is part of the gig.
Speaking of commercial, so is product management team or product management group or engineering group on a larger scale, let's say, are they also the ones that set the price for the software, or is there like a different team that puts the tag on?
So it depends on the size of the company, typically. Engineering, unless you're like a one-man band, no, typically engineering isn't involved, which is probably a good thing. The times I've seen engineering involved in pricing, you get over-engineering. We have more tiers and additions and ways in which you can charge than is required. If you're in a big company, usually there's a commercial division, so it's an entirely separate function. But they will take input from the likes of product managers and product marketing managers as well, that are sort of a step further away from engineering towards marketing. So it depends, is the answer.
Yeah, good answer. Because like you said, something interesting is like it's sometimes it's better to come second in the market than being the first. Because like you said, you learn from failures or successes of your of the guy who came first. And I think that also helps you put your product finance wise as to, okay, so this company is charging this much, so maybe I can keep my range around, somewhere around the same.
Put it this way, it's much easier to copy something that already exists than it is to come up with something entirely new. Even if you've got vision that is unique in an area that already exists. So I'm not saying you should copy everything, because otherwise you have nothing unique. So why would somebody buy something from you over from your competitor? In fact, I've been looking at, so the thing I now do aside from Cookdown is the advanced product group work, which is all about finding pain we can solve with software and solving that pain with software. So we're finding problems afresh. And as part of that, I end up going to quite a lot of conferences these days. And the recent one I went to was focused on the ITSM space. It was a conference called SITS, Service Desk and Support Show. It was in London, which is not that far from me. And I looked at sort of 6-7 ITSM tools that were exhibiting, and in the middle of the market they're really, really similar. And so you go to them and you're an ITSM tool. Cool, I get what ITSM tools are. Tell me about what makes you unique. And the answers are really, really telling. You get everything from kind of like ours is cheaper. So ours is cheaper tells me there is nothing unique about what you build. It's just cheaper. So it's commodity software rather than the value. There's no reason for someone to stick with your ITSM tool over someone else's. But then there were some that had unique features or capabilities, but that charged accordingly for them. And it's really interesting how this varies market on market.
Yeah, that made me wonder, because even if you, so there was a, while I was squared out, was it Rich or someone, was it maybe Justin, that presented a slide that there are three circles. It's like this product is good, your product is required, and there was something else. But that was a great slide, because even if you make a top tier 10 out of 10 product, if the market does not need a 10 out of 10 product, it only needs 8 features, and you make 10 features and then you're charging more, just saying that, okay, compared to our competition, we have more features. But if the market is not asking for those features, but you're still giving them and then charging them more, that's probably not a great idea.
So that was April Dunford. So this I don't know what she called this matrix, but there were three. It was like a Venn diagram with 3 circles. Your solution, market context, and trends. And you want to be in the space where you have all of those things. You're on trend, your solution provides what's needed, and you understand the market context. And without those, if you only understand the trends in the market context, but your solution doesn't hit the mark, then you're fully into the category of marketing vaporware and dreams and things that aren't real. Versus you're on trend, but your solution isn't marketed well. It's like, okay, well, the software is kind of cool, but it's a bit confusing. What the hell is this? Versus,
can you quickly show that? So
let's see if I can,
for the people who are watching the video.
How should I do that? Do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, let me see if I can find it real quick.
It's just at the bottom there.
The person in question is April Dunford. She's an expert in kind of product pitch and position. Here we go, found it. Let me just share my screen. Share.
Because that is a really interesting diagram to look at.
It is a really interesting diagram to look at. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen now. But this is
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
essentially. So you want to be here in the middle where things are hot. You have a solution that you've marketed well that is trendy. If you have a solution that is marketed well but it's not trendy, yeah, it might hit the mark, but it's not particularly exciting. So it's not necessarily going to be on this up into the right trajectory you want your software to be on. If your solution it hits the mark and is trendy but is marketed poorly, then sort of like there's confusion about what exactly it is and what exactly it does. Marketing is annoyingly valuable as well. Speaking as someone that comes from a product background, and really you need all of the above. This is
Absolutely.
the diagram.
Absolutely. Yeah, all interesting stuff, I'm sure. Again, I've seen the glimpses of it here and there, but I still do sometimes, because today I'm also in a similar role, that I'm the bridge between the customers and the product team. But yeah, it's great to know perspective of also the customers as well as the product management as to what goes on in each of their psyche, and how the user wants more features, but the product team is, they want to make the product cheaper. They want to eliminate the unused, unnecessary code. They want to optimize the performance and all that. So just finding the balance is the key.
Yeah, definitely. And I think thing that's really important there is as an engineering lead, I wouldn't say this is strictly product management now, is to keep an eye on how your engineering teams are actually kind of spending their time. Because if they're spending all their time dibbing around fixing tech debt and not, or firefighting or something, let's say, that tells you something, because you want to be making an active decision around how you spend your engineering team's time and efforts. So that's one to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bruce. Again, I realize it's not something that you can cover under an hour, because probably we
It's a massive
can
topic.
talk forever about this.
As you probably worked out, I could talk about this for days.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. There's a lot more to talk about. Maybe we'll have a two-parter. Maybe we'll come back again for the second part, and we can continue the discussion. Awesome. Thanks, Bruce, again. Thanks, everyone, for joining in. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we did. Again, this is one of the topics that is very commonly searched, I would say, very commonly desired, for sure. Just finding the right balance, finding the right audience versus finding the right engineering solutions. All of it is pretty interesting.
I agree. And if there's anyone out there that has any questions on anything I've said, I love talking about this stuff, as you've probably figured out by now. So I'm on Twitter @TheRealBruceC. So feel free to tweet me and ask me any questions. I'm happy to take them.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Thanks all. Thanks for joining, and I will see you in the next one.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a nice day. Cheers.
Bye.